Hi everyone. I think we can just get started now. So I will share my screen. And today we're going to be talking about math programs. So mostly summer camps. But yeah, there's a lot to choose from, and I've gone to a few, so I can talk a little about those. And then, as usual, any questions that you have, you can put in the chat. Okay. So this is just a list of a bunch of camps. And there's like the big three, I guess you could say, at the top, which are Ross, Promise, and then Math Camp. Um, Math Camp is the one that I went to last year and also the year before that. I also applied to Ross and Promise, but I didn't get a chance to go to those because I didn't get into Promise, but Ross was happening at the same time as math camp, so that didn't work out. But there's kind of a lot of differences between these different programs. Um, Ross and Promise are focused more on number theory, and they also focus a lot on like proofs and learning the fundamentals of proof writing, um, and then applying that to like building up the the basics to like get to more complicated number theory results. And then math camp is pretty different in that it's more about like exploration of a lot of different topics in math. And I will talk more about that on the next slide. But yeah, and then there's also SUMAC, which is at Stanford. That one focuses on abstract algebra, and also they do topology. You have like two choices, I think it is. The first one is abstract algebra and group theory, and the second one is abstract algebra and topology. So those are pretty cool topics. They're like very like advanced math topics that you wouldn't be able to learn um, maybe in other like high school programs. So that's pretty cool. Awesome Math is one that is definitely more focused on competition math. So if you're looking to like qualify for AME or JMO, AMO, and then maybe MOP, then that would be a good choice. Canada USA Math Camp is it's a math camp, it's a summer program, and every year basically they accept about 120 students, including like any alumni that want to come back. And basically, well, I'll talk about it more uh, on the slide that comes after this, but they let you choose your own classes, and there's like a lot of things to select from. And then also, there's a big focus on like the community and activities that you can do while you're at the camp. So it's really fun, and you also learn a lot. Yeah, I'll keep going. So there's also HCSSIM, which is the Hampshire College Summer Studies in Mathematics. It's kind of similar to Math Camp in that they also focus a lot on like exploring different topics um, in mathematics, and they have like kind of quirky traditions, and basically try to make sure that they're like making math fun and interesting, and looking at it in different ways. And then there's the Texas State Honors Summer Math Camp, which is, I believe, it's a program that you can go to like year after year, and each year you can like do more different things. So once you go there the first year, they like if you decide to go back, then you can actually start doing like research, and you get access to talking to the actual professors at Texas State. So that's really cool because you have like these mentors that are right there, and that you can talk to help you with your research. There's also these math camps called Mathly and Mathly, or which are like interesting names. But this is actually the one that I was like recommended to do when I applied to math camp the first year. Since I think I was a little bit like yeah on the younger side for math camp. They recommended that I applied to these, and I believe I got in. But basically, it's more like course based, and they're focusing on discrete mathematics, so like number theory, and also like combinatorics. So yeah, it's it's less of like I think the kind of freedom that you would have at a camp like math camp. Awesome Math is so it's a camp that was started by I think people who are like very involved in the math competition setting. So they have written problems and worked with the the highest performing people like at MOP and IMO and stuff. So yeah, their courses are very geared towards like improving those types of skills. And they have different levels. And at the beginning levels, they're definitely like short answer questions like you would see on the Amy or the AMCs. And then at the higher levels, they transition into like proof problems um, that you would see on a typical Olympiad. So yeah, okay. Now I will just talk a little bit about math camp because it's the one I have the most experience in. But I have some friends who have gone to like others of the camps that I've talked about. So you can ask questions about those later too. So as I said before, I went to math camp last summer and also the summer before. But the first time I went, it was online. So I remember I actually gave a talk a talk about my experience at math camp a year-ish ago, but a lot of that information that I've said has changed because my experience in person was definitely, I think, more of like the full experience. And it was more fun. The year before was definitely like fun and exciting and interesting, but being able to see people in person and interact in that way like brought a whole new level to it. So I think the two things that math camp focuses the most on are exploration and community. So the first one is like mathematical exploration. Um, so the math camp is called Canada USA Math Camp. And so people just call it math camp for short. Yeah. So in terms of mathematical exploration, that comes through classes and also projects that you can take on during the camp. The classes, there are, I think, 4 blocks a day, and you don't have to, and you probably should not take all 4 classes every single day because that would be pretty tiring. But the idea is that you have a lot of freedom to explore and decide what you want to do while you're at camp. So they have a lot of different topics that you can learn more about, like linear algebra, abstract algebra, analysis, which is really interesting because I never thought I would learn about that in high school. Topology, computational mathematics, which is like math and CS combined in some way. And then also they do have some competition problem based classes because some of the alums or a lot of the people who attend math camp also do have experience doing competitions. And so they could come back and teach classes using their experience. I remember like last summer, one of the counselors, the junior counselors, went to IMO like during his math competition days, and he was like one of the people who started using projective geometry, which is like a really cool kind of computational geometry trick, um, that allows you to like look at ratios of the lengths of different segments. But basically, he taught about like the motivation behind how he figured that out. Um, and it was just really interesting to see like such a unique topic and how he actually came up with that. So yeah, also for projects, they have a wide offering of those. I last year I did Onitama, which is a game, and basically we did like mathematical analysis of if there is a strategy to win or if that game like always ends in a draw or something. So yeah, they also had projects about like game shows and things, and also you could like make a little booklet of proofs by pictures with no words, which was pretty cool. So you could like take that home as a proof of what you did that summer. So yeah, there's a lot of things to choose from. And then for community, that's I think one thing that sometimes might get overlooked, but especially for an in-person camp, it's really amazing to be able to interact with your peers, but also like see your mentors and counselors that are teaching classes um, in the setting of like in dorms or just eating with them in the cafeteria. There's field trips that are organized, and also there's a lot of student-led events where there's like a big physical wall or board that has all of the events um, taped onto it, which is pretty cool. And there's also a talent show at the end of the camp. And then they have like mathematical activities, kind of like relays are basically you work in a group on different problems, and sometimes that involves like chasing each other around to get new problems and things like that. Colloquia are just like informal kind of talks given by mentors and counselors about math. And then the yearbook at the end of camp is something you get to take home, like a reminder of yeah, everything at math camp. Okay, so that is all for my slides. Um, yeah, feel free to ask for pretty much anything about like these programs, and I will try to help. So one person asked, do I know Ross Math Camp? So yeah, Ross was one of the ones that I listed. And last year, one of my friends went to Ross while I was at math camp. And basically, the focus of Ross is on number theory, like promise. They also kind of have I think, a pretty rigorous approach to number theory and like the proofs of the theorems in number theory and things like that. They have like problem sets that they do every day, and they can work on those with like their friends after classes. And yeah, I think they also had like a talent show or something um, where, yeah, my friend like sang in it. Um, but I think, as is the case for like any of these camps, you're going to meet a lot of people who really love the same things that you do, and it's a really cool experience. Like, no matter, I guess, the format of the camp, like math camp and Ross are definitely very different, but I know that I and my friend both really enjoyed our experiences there. Um, yeah, so especially the ones that I listed on the like top part of the list, they are very competitive. And so I think it depends really on like what you're looking for in the camp that you want to attend. Um, because most of these math camps, especially if they're like very selective, have a problem set, you might want to think about like how much time you would be able to put into those problem sets. They're really looking at like how much effort you put into the problems and how much thought that you've given them, and also the ability that you show to like be able to explain your thoughts, um, and explain how you approach a problem for the first time. So yeah, I would say maybe apply to a couple that you think like fit what you're looking for the most. Um, like you can choose between kind of more competition focused ones versus exploratory ones, um, versus some of them that are like focused very much on one specific subject and like going very deeply into that. So those are some things that you could consider when looking at like whether you want to apply to one or a couple and which ones. I hope that helps. Also, I am not sure about the like specific dates, but I think by now a lot of the camps like application deadlines have probably passed. But I believe Ross is still open. It's due March 31st. But I know that math camp is closed. So so someone asked what is the most important factor for applying to a math camp? Um, do you mean like what is the most important factor for like deciding where to apply to? Oh, okay. So I guess I think you're asking like which component do they kind of look at the most? So I would say the vast, or not the vast, but like a lot of um, the importance and the significance will be placed on the problems if they have a problem set for you to do, because that shows like that shows how you go about doing math and also like your thought processes in general. Um, yeah, like these are math camps after all. And so they're looking for people who are really interested in math. And will pursue and like keep trying a problem um, until they get it or until like they get something that they can write onto the page. So if like when you're doing the problem set, the application problems, I think it's important to like clearly explain what goes through your mind when you're doing the problems, and then also if you can't solve it fully, like just put whatever thoughts you have because they really want to see like in the face of a difficult problem, what do you do? Um, and hopefully what you do is not just like give up and not put anything. So that is definitely really important. But I would say that the essay is also, I think it's just important to like make sure that you will be a good fit for the environment that the camp hopes to create. So, like in your essay, you'll be able to more fully flesh out why you love math or like why you want to go to this camp, and also just like how you interact with other people, and that will give them an idea of how you will fit into the camp if you do go. So I don't think that they are looking for a specific thing like in the essay, but they want to make sure that you'll be kind and um, just interact with the people around you well, and just like, yeah, contribute to the environment of like love for math and supporting each other. Um, yeah, so basically what I'm saying is like the essay is an important part of showing like just making sure that you have this ability and want to be in that environment, but the problems will be pretty important in like showing them how you think. So for the math camp application, they I think they usually have 6 problems, and that was the case for last year and the year before. So I think that most people will probably do at least like 4 of the problems or 3-ish fully, but they'll have like very significant work or like documentation of what they thought of for the other ones. So for me, I think I probably did like almost 5 problems fully, but they have a lot of different parts to them. And so I definitely like missed some of the later parts for some of those problems. But what was important, I think, was that I like I spent a lot of time and wrote some kind of progress or like, yeah, partial progress for each one. And actually last year I remember I like spent a very long time just trying different things. And so you can also just like show them that you've thought of and attempted like to look at the problem from different perspectives, and that I think they will appreciate that too. Okay, so I've got a question about NACLO, which is not a math program, but it is a language competition. And yeah, I've talked a little bit about it before, but it's like basically you have a bunch of language puzzles, and they can be translation, or they can involve like how a computer looks at language. Um, but I think the there's like a huge repository of all of the past problems that NACLO has had on their website, which is nacloweb.org. And in past slash future competitions, they have like practice problems. So those go all the way to like 2007, I think. And they also have a they also have like sample practice problems at the end, which are not actually from uh, past competitions. So you probably will not run out of practice for NACLO. Another thing that I would say is that like to look at there's books. There's two that are called the Red and the Green Book. Um, I think if you search it up, it might show up, but they're just called NACLO, like the Red Book and the Green Book. Um, yeah, I think, yeah, I found it. So you can probably search that up and find it. Um, Basically, those just have a bunch of problems in them too. And I think also like learning a little bit about language itself and the structure of it would be helpful. Like, you don't need to know different languages necessarily, but like knowing the common patterns and how languages are structured, and like syntax is definitely helpful. So, okay. So, tips on how to get into Ross. Um, so I think I got into Ross like last summer, and I think what they're looking for, a lot of it is like the problem set. So um I remember, I don't know, just like having some parts of problems that I didn't know, and I still wrote like what any progress that I had for those. Um, yeah, I'm not sure about like specific tips beyond that, because I think that for any of these or math programs, it's pretty much just like write clearly, um, try to get as much progress as you can, and like clearly tell them what you did or didn't do. I think that if you write on paper, um, it will it will take less time probably, because LaTeX, you have to like figure out the symbols and things and make it look nice. But uh, I think if you're going to spend a lot of time on it already, LaTeX is probably the way to go, especially if you want if you don't have like super legible handwriting that is like very easy to read. But I mean, if you write on paper, they won't like not consider you because of that or anything. Okay. Um, what math background is expected of Primes USA sophomore and junior applicants respectively? So Primes USA is it's a program, I guess. It's for math research though, and I think that for sophomores and for juniors, it might be a little bit different because they just opened applications for sophomores last year. So maybe people, or I'm not sure if a lot of people know about it, but people probably do know by now that you can apply as a sophomore. Um, but the vast majority of applicants will be juniors. So I think for sophomores, you definitely have to show like interest in getting into math research and also some kind of like some form of mathematical maturity um, in order to show that like you'll be able to take on research, which is very different from competitions as just a sophomore. I think also maybe that you would probably want to show that you're like able to work in groups because the sophomores have to, yeah, they have to work in groups for their projects. You you do like individual projects only in junior year. But for mathematical background, I think that it depends on the year, um, especially because basically the way they gauge like whether they think that you're ready for research or not is the problem set that they have. And the math background for that usually will involve like some form of like linear algebra because linear algebra just like shows up everywhere. Um, Also like abstract algebra could show up sometimes. Like this year they had a question on groups. So yeah. And also maybe a little bit of like calculus. Um, and this year they actually had a problem that was like it was about it was kind of similar to like analysis techniques. So you don't have to know these things like beforehand, but I think that you have to be able to like look in the right direction so that you'll find out like what you actually need to know from a book or like from searching online. They I mentioned this last time, but Evan Chen has a project called the Napkin Project, and someone recommended it to me for before I applied to Primes, but it's about a lot of these like advanced math topics that could show up on the Primes set. So, yeah, I think like a good foundation in um, algebra and combo and number theory and all of those, and then like being able to look at those more advanced topics as you approach them on the problem set would be the most important. Yeah, so for the problem set, you definitely do not have to answer all of the questions correctly. And I think it's very, very hard to do that. So they have two sections. The first section is called general, I think, general math problems. Um, and those ones are like more similar to competition math problems, where they have like the proof style Olympiad problems. And I think even those you don't necessarily have to solve correctly. And sometimes they'll give you like hints about what you could look at online, or they'll send you like a link to learn more about something that could be useful to that. That happened for like one of those Olympiad problems on the set that I solved, but I did not solve the problem fully. Um, so that was like similar to Math Camp and Ross. And then the one with the section with the more advanced topics, definitely you do not have to solve those. And you can actually use like different methods and techniques, or like tools, to get partial progress on those. So like for some of them, I wrote programs to see what was happening, even though I like could not actually mathematically prove the result that they wanted. So yeah, similar to these other math camps with qualifying tests or quizzes, um, like showing your reasoning, and through that, like the ability to go into research is important, and like more important than being able to just do everything correctly. Sorry, I didn't see one of the questions. So it was about like promise, the difference between promise and Ross. So yeah, promise and Ross are definitely the most similar out of the ones that I listed at the beginning of the meeting, because they both focus on number theory. My I'm not sure because I didn't go to either of them, but from like my impression of them, it seems that like Ross is a little bit more like intense in like problem set solving. Basically, you have like this big problem set book, and you go through that for the entirety of the camp. Um, and like people at the camp go through that problem set at like different rates. But yeah, so I think that like they have courses um in they have like lectures and like small meetings every day at Ross, and then they have like most of the time beyond that is spent doing those problem sets. And then for Promise, I think they have like seminars that cover maybe a little bit more diverse topics. Like I know they have seminars about like graphs, um, and I don't know, cryptography. Those are like not as related to number theory, although they have some connections between them. So maybe it's like a little bit less focused solely on number theory. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if that is completely true, but I think that both of them also do focus a lot about on like proofs. Um, so yeah, I don't know if that helps. Okay, I think that's all for today. Thank you all for coming, and see you next week.